This video program is intended as a basic orientation to VR for Centers for Independent Living staff. Graphic, Vocational Rehabilitation Basics, Centers for Independent Living, Staff Orientation. Graphic, Video Moderator, Sheila Hoover. Graphic, Presenter, Sheila Blaine. Graphic, Presenter, Phil Matthews. Graphic, Presenter, Dan Franks. Graphic, Presenter, Ignacia Martindale. Graphic, Title, Introduction, Sheila Hoover.
Hi, I'm Sheila Hoover, and I work with the Oregon Vocational Rehabilitation Program. I'm here today with several of our staff from around the state, and we're looking forward to sharing some information about Oregon VR, as well as our sister programs, the Oregon Commission for the Blind, and the tribal VR programs that are around the state, so we can work more effectively with you as partners.
Graphic, VR's primary mission, Sheila Blaine.
Hi, my name is Sheila Blaine. I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and I'm here to tell you about the general services of vocational rehabilitation. It is a federally established program through the Rehabilitation Services Administration, and the main goal is to help people with disabilities obtain and maintain employment and to remove as many disability-related barriers as possible.
Graphic, Oregon VR's basic structure, Sheila Blaine.
VR in Oregon has two branches: the Oregon Commission for the Blind, that serves people who have a primary disability of blindness, and general VR services who work with all the other disabilities. However, if a person has a primary disability of blindness and other disabilities, then the two branches work together. The process of receiving services is not short. It takes a while because we do a holistic view of a person's situation. We look at their work history, we look at their current situation, what their resources are, and then we try to provide the best services we can to that individual to help them become successfully employed. It's a voluntary program, and people are not required to participate, but we do expect that if they come in, that they will fully participate.
Graphic, Vocational Planning, Individualizing Assessment and Services.
We take the time to work with a person's individual interests, abilities, and disabilities. We also work with partner agencies to help address other issues that we can't address. We also have different VR partners in the state of Oregon, such as vocational rehabilitation with the Veterans Administration, the tribal VR programs, and the workers' compensation VR programs. So we do joint plans with them and do partnering with the funding that's available. If you'd like to find out more about the tribal VR programs, you can go to www.canar.org and find out where your local program is available.
Graphic, VR Eligibility, Phil Matthews.
Hi, my name's Phil Matthews. I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor. Generally, when people find out I'm a voc rehab counselor, I always get the same question: how do I become eligible for services? At voc rehab, we basically have three general requirements for a client to be eligible for services. The first requirement would be that the individual has a documentable disability. Now, if they didn't have documentation, say they don't have insurance or something, send them to VR. We can refer them out to obtain the services necessary to obtain that documentation. The second requirement would be that that disability creates a substantial barrier to employment. Now, by substantial barrier means, would that individual be able to perform the essential functions of the job? Would they be able to fulfill what the employer is looking for from them in order to do that job? For instance, the individual needed to lift 50 pounds, but they had a back injury, could only lift 15, they wouldn't be able to perform the essential function of that job. The third requirement would be that they would have an ability to benefit in terms of an employment outcome. And what that means is, would they actually, after receiving voc rehab services, be employable? Or would their disability be so severe that they were completely unable to work? Now, if the client also receives SSDI or SSI disabled, they would be what we call presumed eligible. That doesn't mean that they're eligible for services. It means that we would assume that they have a disability that does create that substantial barrier to employment. They would still go through the process. We would obtain the documentation, identify the barriers, and make them eligible or not based on that information. So now I've told you a little bit about what it takes to determine a client eligible, but what is that actual process? We know what the qualifications are. But part of the process would be that we would sit down with the client and we'd talk with them. We'd identify what the disability is, how that impacts them as an individual, as a person. Just because somebody has a specific disability, I won't name anything, but just something specific, it doesn't mean the next person who has that same diagnosis is going to experience that disability the same. We want to find out from the individual what it is that has kept them from getting a job, and what it is that's kept them possibly from maintaining that job. Some folks are great at getting a job, but their disability prevents them from maintaining that job and keeping it. Other folks, their disability just flat out prevents them from getting the job. But we want to find out what it is, how they're impacted, so that we can design our services to fit who they are as an individual. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the medical documentation. We have to have that documentation in order to determine specific disabilities. And we can take a look at that and get other information from it that might help us determine what some of the barriers to employment might be and how they're impacted, some of the things they may have told their physician or their psychologist. Then we're going to sit down with the client and we're going to talk with them again. We're going to go over what we found for the barriers for employment, and then what we found in the documentation, and check in with them, make sure that everything kind of fits so that we get a good holistic picture of that individual and what their needs are. One of the other things that we're going to take a look at is what their past work history is. What is it that they used to do? What kind of skills did they have in that type of work? Can those skills be applied to another type of work? What is it that prevents them from going back to that work? For instance, if a client suffered a physical injury and they did physical labor and they needed to lift 50 pounds frequently, but now with the back injury they can't do that. We're going to take a look at all those skills and see if we can apply them to another kind of work that fits with their interests and their abilities, so that we can help them design their plan with that goal in mind. We're going to take a look at the labor market. We're going to make sure there's even jobs available in the area for what they'd like to do if they are changing careers. If there aren't jobs in the area, are they willing to move in order to find that job? So those would be some of the things that we would look at as we move forward determining eligibility. We do some of it in the background, reviewing records. We sit back down with the client and we go over what we found, check in with them, make sure that it fits, that we've got a good understanding of who they are as a person. That way we can provide the best services possible.
Graphic, the individual plan for employment, Dan Franks.
My name is Dan Franks and I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor. The individual plan for employment, also known as a plan, is a document that outlines the services that vocational rehabilitation can provide to the client in order for the client to be successfully employed. The plan is really an outline that identifies the job goal, why the job goal was chosen, and the services that VR will be providing. Not only that, we include timelines, a start date and end date for the plan, a start date and end date to the best of our ability for each service, the cost of each service, and who will be providing that service. Finally, we also determine how we will measure progress of the plan.
Graphic, Determining Services, Part 2.
The way our services are determined are through a variety of methods. For one, we can do assessments to find out a person's work values, their skills. We also really like to know what is motivating the person to want to go to work. The voc rehab counselor and the individual need to agree on the goal in order to move forward, and that goal needs to be compatible with the individual's interests, their abilities, and there also needs to be a strong job market to support that goal. Self-employment may be an employment choice, but it can't be considered a vocational goal.
Graphic, Employment Goal.
So when we think about an individual's employment goal, it's important that the counselor and the client agree on what a reasonable goal is. So some things we look at are that client's interests, their priorities, their abilities and strengths. It's also very important that there's a job market out there to support that employment goal. So we do some labor market analysis to see where are the jobs, how many jobs are out there, are they paying enough, and things like that. Another aspect to the plan for employment is that some clients are interested in self-employment. And VR at times can support self-employment, and it's important to remember that self-employment itself is not an employment goal. An employment goal would be, for example, a beautician, and whether or not that's working for in a shop and getting paid by the company, or if it's self-employment. Those are issues that are decided upon by the counselor and the client.
Graphic, VR Service Summary.
So when we talk about VR services, I may not have been entirely clear what that means. So there are certain primary services that VR can provide, and those are evaluation, counseling and guidance, training, job search assistance, worksite modifications and ergonomics, and disability-related technology and services.
Graphic, Closing the File, Ignacia Martindale.
Hi, my name is Ignacia Martindale, and I work for vocational rehabilitation. VR services ends when a client has been employed for at least 90 days. Also, when a client and an employer are satisfied. After a client's file is closed, or any reason, they can always come back and reapply for services.
Graphic, 3 primary reasons why VR says no.
VR can choose to say no to client services for some reasons, and the reasons are it does not match their disability, it's illegal, and it does not lead to employment.
Graphic, in addition, VR may elect not to provide services for various other reasons. For more information, contact your local VR branch office. Graphic, Working Together, Sheila Hoover.
We really hope this information has been helpful to you. And in order to make sure that the referrals process goes as smoothly as it can, we're hoping that you can work with the client on your end before you make the referral to ensure that they're ready to look for work and that they have looking for work and getting a job as a primary focus. Once that's done and you are confident that they're ready to go, please call your local VR or Oregon Commission for the Blind office in your community, and the staff there will be very happy to help you with the next steps.
Graphic, in addition to the Centers for Independent Living, VR applicant referrals may come from a wide range of sources.
A few tips to make the process of working with VR a little bit more smooth include helping the individual that you're planning to refer to resolve their non-disability related barriers before you make the referral. Those could be things like transportation, childcare, and that sort of thing. Also, involve VR as soon as you can in your planning process so we can start to think about how our services can dovetail with yours. Finally, if there is a disagreement or some sort of confusion and you can't get a resolution with the counselor, please do contact the local branch manager. They'll be more than happy to work with you and with the individual that you've referred in order to resolve the conflict. We hope that this has been helpful to you, and we look forward to working with you out in the field.
Graphic URLs for Oregon VR and Oregon Commission for the Blind. Graphic list of presenters. Graphic video program credits, Oregon VR training.